So, Mr. President, this morning we got some more troublesome news about the economy under Donald Trump. Today we learned the economy added only 73,000 jobs last month, far below expectations. But that wasn't the worst of it. We also learned the economy actually added less than 20,000 jobs each in May and June, the 2 months following Donald Trump's Liberation Day. That's more than 250,000 fewer jobs than originally thought. Let me say that again. We learned this morning that the economy actually added over 250,000 fewer jobs than originally thought. We also learned that unemployment has gone up. It is disturbing to say, but the chickens are coming home to roost on Donald Trump's destructive trade war, and the American people are paying the price. You sow chaos, Donald Trump, you reap chaos. And that's what the president is finding out this morning. 250,000 fewer jobs is a significant revision and a flashing red light. Donald Trump's chaotic tariffs are already bleeding our economy of good-paying jobs. In fact, aside from the pandemic, this job revision is the largest since 1979. In other words, the revision saying we've lost jobs more than any since 1979, except for the period of COVID. That is what tariff whiplash looks like. Businesses, small, large, medium, always need stability. But businesses are waving around their arms in the dark without a clue of what Donald Trump is going to do next. And we now have clear evidence that it's stunting hiring and growth. If Donald Trump's tariffs have created this much trouble just 4 months after Liberation Day, imagine the trouble Americans will have 8 months after Liberation Day, a year after Liberation Day, when the effects of tariffs go further and more deeply into the economy. Remember, this job report comes a day after we learned inflation accelerated over the last month. And it comes 2 days after we learned growth slowed down in the first half of this year and that business investment is down 3%. But what's Donald Trump doing about all this? As bad as his previous trade policies have been, today he is doubling down on his awful trade policies. Last night, he imposed a slew of tariffs on 68 countries around the world, including some of our most important trading partners. Again, if the effects of Liberation Day have been this bad just in 4 months, imagine the pain and harm Americans will feel 8 months, 12 months from now with these new tariffs just imposed yesterday. Well, if this is what Liberation Day was supposed to look like, then God help us. Hiring is down. Prices are ticking up. Families are paying more than $2,400 a year because of these tariffs. $2,400 is a lot of money, even to families way into the middle class. And businesses have no clue of what Donald Trump is doing next. Worse, we still don't have any idea what Donald Trump has actually agreed to with partners like Japan, the European Union, and South Korea. Because typical, this administration, this president, mistells the truth, lies more than any other president we've seen, and he just makes it up as he goes along, and then changes, retracts. We know all about those cartoons that he never did cartoons, but that happens over and over again, and somehow too many of the American people forgive him for baldly lying. Well, look at these trade breakthroughs. Look at the pattern. Donald Trump hails the agreement as a major breakthrough, announces huge amounts of money coming to the U.S. And then the next day, the people he's made the deals with, the countries made the deals with, retract. They say, that didn't happen. He just makes it up. But Donald Trump, you pay the price for making it up because businesses don't know what you're doing. And so they cut back. Business investment was down 3% in the last quarter. Before Donald Trump was president, and let's not forget, he's trying to sell 15% tariff as a great thing. Before Donald Trump was president, these countries had tariffs in the 1% to 2% range. Now it's 15%. You know what that is? That's a hike, a price hike on American families. Asking Americans to bear the brunt of 15% tariffs is no sane person's definition of victory. Instead of cutting off 5 of your fingers, we're only cutting off 3. Don't you want to congratulate us? That's the kind of thing Donald Trump says. And we have no clue what America is actually getting in return. In fact, we don't even know what these deals are because Trump lies about them. There's a pattern here. As I said, there's a pattern. One day, Donald Trump comes out bragging that his so-called deals are somehow major victories, but the next day, reality sets in, and it's abundantly clear when you look at the details he lied, exaggerated, hyped what was in the deals. So, one day he said, Japan's going to invest $500 million in the United States. You know what Japan says the next day? It's at most 2% of that $500 billion. 2%. How does this guy get away with it? But he doesn't get away with it because the chaos he creates, the mistrust he creates, hurt business and hurt the country. So we want to know. The administration refuses to be transparent, refuses to provide the details. And that is very bad for the American people and for the economy. So today, my colleagues and I are urging transparency from the administration. We are writing Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick, and Ambassador Greer to immediately come clean with answers to a number of important questions about Donald Trump's trade deal. First of all, how are any of these deals going to be actually verified and enforced? How do we know these investments Donald Trump has bragged about are going to take place? Because it seems the countries who made the deals have a different story than what Trump tells. Second, what system or mechanism exists to track any of this information? What industries will see the benefit? What kind of investments are we talking about? Have they thought these things through, or is this just pops up in Donald Trump's head and it then comes out of his mouth? Finally, especially crucially, how do we know that these investments, even if they happen, are going to benefit the public and not just benefit the businesses and industries owned by Donald Trump and his friends? We have seen over and over again that what they do in the White House doesn't benefit the American people, but benefits the people who work in the White House, their cronies, and Donald Trump himself, who's gaining millions and millions of dollars from his presidency by taking advantage of the laws they passed. No other president would do it. Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he saw what Trump is doing to benefit himself as president. And it causes Americans to just lose faith in democracy. So, it's been 4 months since Donald Trump's so-called Liberation Day, and by now we have enough evidence to show these chaotic tariffs are inflicting real damage to the economy. We'd be foolish to think doubling down is somehow going to make it better, but that's what Trump did yesterday. Donald Trump needs to reverse course because the only deal he's actually struck is a raw deal for American families. The only deal Donald Trump has struck is a raw deal for American families, consumers, and businesses. Today's job report is the latest warning sign that this tariff chaos must end. Now on the Smithsonian Institute and impeachment. Well, we all know that Donald Trump loves to rewrite and erase parts of history he doesn't like. Yesterday, though, we saw a shameful new low. Yesterday, we learned that Donald Trump quietly forced the Smithsonian to remove him from the impeachment exhibit at the American History Museum. You can't make this up. This is a man rewriting history, or thinks he can rewrite history. He can't, but he thinks he can. He is censoring the American History Museum. It's Orwellian. It's downright Orwellian. It's something you'd see in an authoritarian regime. It's something the head of North Korea would do, not America. And quite frankly, it's sad, it's pathetic, but it's beyond that. Donald Trump is so egotistical. He is so angry that he is the only president in American history to be impeached twice, that he wants to try and change the past, change the truth, and trade history for propaganda. But Donald Trump, you can't change history. You can't avoid the truth. History will haunt you. You are the only president to be impeached twice. You can run, but you cannot hide from the judgment of history. So here's my message to the president. No matter what exhibits you try to distort, the American people will never forget that you were impeached, not once, but twice. The American people want Donald Trump to focus on lowering their costs, not rewriting history about his impeachments, not building an extravagant ballroom at the White House, raising $200 million from his cronies for it. Who knows what they get in return? Not covering up the Epstein scandal. But as always, Donald Trump's priorities are way off from what the American people need and want. I yield the floor.